Bonjour. Bonjour, bienvenue à Paris les amis, welcome to Paris. Could somebody confirm the sound is okay for you? And then we'll get started. Bonjour, bienvenue tout le monde. Bonjour Janet. I bet some of you recognize this place. We are in the 19th arrondissement in Paris, in La Villette, in fact. I hope you can hear me okay. We are lucky, the weather is splendid. Thank you for confirming the sound's fine. It's a little chilly. We had gotten used to spring temperatures this week, but today is about 9 Celsius, so I think it's about 48, 50 Fahrenheit. But the sky is so pretty. We're not going to complain. Look at that. Here we are in La Villette, close to La Villette, a former village outside Paris, in fact. We are continuing our exploration of the former villages outside Paris. I've already taken you to Montmartre. We followed Rue Le Pic a few weeks ago. I've also taken you to the 17th arrondissement over the last few months, several strolls in the former village known as Monceau, les Batignolles, very recently. So we are continuing to explore these villages, and today we are going to talk about one of these villages that used to stand outside the city limits called La Villette. Now most people know le Bassin de la Villette, but it really used to be a village. Here is le Bassin de la Villette. I know some of you have been here before. There is a lot of history and a lot of good stories to tell here. And let's hope the wind is not going to play tricks on me. We are going to take a stroll around the Bassin de la Villette, and we will wrap up at the end over there on the other side in a little while. Oui, il fait très beau. The weather is lovely. So let's start first with the story of a wall, shall we? I am facing the sun right now, which is not ideal, so I'll try to stand on the side so you can see this beautiful building known as la Rotonde de la Villette, the Rotunda. There was, as you know, there were a lot of walls around Paris. A lot of walls over the centuries. Some walls get more publicity than others. One wall that doesn't get mentioned enough is the Farmers General Wall. And of all the walls Paris had, it is the only one probably, as far as I know, that was not built for defensive purposes, but for taxation purposes. In the 18th century, the century of the French Revolution, King Louis XVI was desperate to find money, and the people of Paris were grumbling. And so the best way he figured out was to build a wall around the city. A wall that went all the way around, was about 3 meters or 10 foot tall. Soldiers would patrol on top of the wall, and then outside the wall were wide boulevards. And the purpose was to control all the merchandise that was coming inside Paris, into Paris, so they could tax it and raise some money. So everything that came into Paris was more expensive, as you can guess, including for Parisians who, a lot of them were already starving. They weren't really thrilled with the prospect of that wall. I see you come in. Bonjour, welcome. We are in Paris in the 19th arrondissement, and today I am going to tell you the story of a former village outside the capital city known as La Villette. This building that you see here is one of 4 places only, 4, where you can still see what the control gates into the city looked like once they built that wall, the Farmers General Wall. Now, not all buildings looked as imposing as this one, the neoclassical style. At the time it was called a barrier, and this one was named Barrier Saint Martin, because Saint Martin was a faubourg, or a small village outside Paris. Today it's known as la Rotonde de la Villette. And this building has seen so many things since it was erected in the late 18th century. It survived 2 fires. It's been fixed. Today it houses a restaurant when restaurants are open, some cultural activities as well. But way back then it was an administrative center for the people who controlled all the taxes on the goods entering Paris. The subway, the metro that you see here on both sides of this building, pretty much follows the former outline of the wall, the Farmers General Wall. Do you see how it curves over there? That's what the wall used to do. And if you go to the other side, it's doing exactly the same thing. So the wall survived the French Revolution somehow, and it was destroyed later in the 19th century. There was another wall erected after that one, believe it or not, known as the Thiers fortifications. We won't talk about this one today, but we might another day. The walls of Paris. Lots of stories to tell there. Do you see the metro over there? Back in the 1960s, if you had been standing right where I am standing, you would have been in the middle of traffic. There was a parking lot for buses as well. This was kind of a crazy place, and we will talk about how much this neighborhood has changed. But I want to give you this peek at the beautiful Rotonde, which way back when was surrounded by other buildings and was one of the entry points into Paris. If you are ready, we shall head towards le Bassin de la Villette, which stands over there. And we are going to talk about that former village outside Paris, La Villette. We're also going to talk about a big, very ambitious project that was dreamed by several French kings and accomplished by a future emperor. A project that changed forever the life of the people who lived in this village of La Villette. It also changed forever the way Paris was supplied, got its water. And it's very important to understand how this project came to be and what happened here. A lot of people come here now. It's a pretty trendy place, but many don't know the story, and that's a shame. It's a really, really cool story. Let's see, if I turn around here, we should have a nice view on the plaza with the beautiful Rotonde. The only one, like I said, of 4 places in Paris where you can still see the former barriers, the entry points into the city. There is one in the 14th arrondissement, one by Place de la Nation, and the other one I have shown you on many occasions at the entrance of the beautiful Parc Monceau in my neighborhood. All the other ones have been destroyed, but they are remembered on the walls on either side of the Rotonde. What you see here are all the names of the former entry points into Paris. You have them on this side, and you have them across the plaza on that wall as well. So this week I walked around to look at them. I did not recognize some of the names. So the project we're going to talk about, what happened here in the very early 19th century, involved le Bassin de la Villette. This is quite a view actually from here. We are on a footbridge right now. Welcome if you just joined us. You see the little electric boats. It feels like summer today. They weren't out this week. So, oh, sorry, I got distracted. There was a strange guy on the side there. I got to keep my eyes out. I was saying this is the Bassin de la Villette. And the Bassin de la Villette was at the heart of this big project that Bonaparte, to name him, before he became Napoleon, the emperor of the French, Bonaparte made it happen. Other kings had dreamed it. He's the one who made it happen. And so the Bassin de la Villette was the first part of the project that was inaugurated in 1808. So he did see it happen, but the project was also to have canals connected. There was a river. If you leave Paris in that direction, northeast of Paris, there is a beautiful area around the river known as the Ourcq, O-U-R-C-Q. And traditionally, through the Middle Ages, that neighborhood, that area, was really fertile land. And it provided Paris with fruit and vegetable and grains. So several kings thought about how to bring the food along that river into Paris. Napoleon was really preoccupied with the water, or I should call him Bonaparte, was really preoccupied more with the water. Paris has always had problems with its water supply. And so the scheme was to build a canal, a first canal that would bring the water from the Ourcq River. It would connect with another canal. This was the Canal de l'Ourcq. It would connect with another canal, which would be le Canal Saint-Denis. That one would go in this direction, and it would connect with the Seine River. These two canals would meet past that bridge over there and enter the Bassin de la Villette, which was built as a reservoir originally. A beautiful reservoir where Parisians could also stroll and have a good time. At this point, a third canal would start, and we are standing right at the start of that canal. And this one's famous, much more famous. It's called le Canal Saint Martin. It was the last one to be completed. And that canal, which starts here, would go east towards the Bastille, at which point it would connect with the Seine River as well. So you had the Bassin de la Villette, and then you had 3 canals. If you want to know where the Canal Saint Martin starts, right here. These are the first locks. It has 9 until it reaches the Bastille. So today we're going to focus on le Bassin de la Villette because it's worth it. I want to point out, that when Bonaparte devised this, it was to bring water, but it was also to give Parisians a place to enjoy themselves. And it was quite groundbreaking at the time. And this is what the place looked like through, I'd say, the 1820s, 1830s. You see the beautiful trees lined up on the sides. You see the building, La Rotonde, we just saw. And you see the countryside around it with a little village on the right-hand side, which is La Villette, right there. So this is what it looked like at the time. But the point was to give it to Parisians for them to enjoy. Look how civilized this was in the 1820s and 1830s. People were playing on the water, just like today. Do you see? In the winter, they could go ice skating when it was really cold. The Bassin would freeze over and they would just go ice skating. So this was all of Bonaparte's idea, and it worked out really, really well. But then, because this area was cheaper than downtown Paris, it started attracting a lot of industrialists. It was the mid-19th century, and the Industrial Revolution started, and this area changed forever, and so did La Villette. And we're going to talk today about what happened at that point, and eventually the end of the story, or should I say a new beginning, will be about what this area is in 2021 for Parisians and visitors alike. So if you are ready, this was quite a long introduction, but I wanted you to understand why we're here. All right. We are now, sorry about this camera move, as I was trying to blow my nose with the wind, it's really cold. The stuff that happens off camera, I am telling you. Look at this. This is a sign that shows you, if you started from here on the Bassin de la Villette, this giant reservoir, this is how long it would take you to reach several sections of the Canal Saint-Denis. Remember, this is the one on this side that goes to the Seine River. And then these are all the stops along the Canal de l'Ourcq, the one that leaves Paris northeast along the Ourcq River. And you can see that the last stop would be 108 kilometers away from here. So what is that, about 60 miles? And it would take us 20 hours and 30 minutes to get there from here. I say Bonaparte, not Napoleon, because he was not the emperor of the French yet. He hadn't crowned himself. He was the first consul. He is a powerful man who emerged out of the mess that the French Revolution was. And at the time, he was only the first consul. He was in charge of the country, but there were other people with him. He was not quite the emperor yet. He crowned himself emperor and became Napoleon at that point. This is always a lively scene, especially on pretty days. The quays on both sides of the Bassin are named after French rivers. We are here on the Quai de la Loire. Across from us over there is the Quai de Seine, and it goes on. Now, what you see are tour boats. And of course, they've been grounded for weeks and weeks. There are no tourists in town. Parisians would love to go on a ride on the canals. This is something you can do. And in fact, I will tell you, I will show you here what you can do. Canorama is the company that does that. And that will help you understand how all of this is organized. Do you see how it starts at the Seine River? By the Bastille, where I took you on a recent stroll, and we talked about the Canal Saint Martin because this is where it ends. And then it goes underground for a while, and then it comes back out. And this is the Canal Saint Martin in the 10th arrondissement. I took the friends with Véro club members on a private stroll there very recently. Then it reaches La Rotonde de la Villette, where we just were. It continues across the Bassin de la Villette. We're going to walk around it today. It keeps going, and it ends at this big complex that's known as Le Parc de la Villette. So this is a 2.5-hour cruise. It's a lot of fun, very different from the Seine River, because you go through the locks, and they take their time. They have 2 departures a day, morning and afternoon. You can either start in La Bastille, which I recommend you do, and end in La Villette 2.5 hours later, or you can do La Villette to La Bastille. And then on either end, of course, you have metros that will bring you back wherever you need to be. And that's what I wanted to show you. So here are the boats that belong to Canorama, and they are grounded. Now they have preserved some of the old buildings that were here when the canals, the management buildings were here. So this is one of them over there. But a lot of it is new construction. In fact, the movie theater that you see here, there's the same one across from us, across the basin from us. This building was part of a temporary buildings that were erected during one of the world fairs that Paris hosted in the 19th century. And they saved those buildings. You know how when they held world fairs here, they would build incredible buildings, and then when the world fair was over, very often they just totally tear them down. So these 2 buildings, the 2 movie theaters, there is one here and there is one here, are actually rescued from the World Fair of, I think it was 1878. I think that was the one, could be wrong. Okay, lots more people than I'd like, not just because of coronavirus, but because of self-coverage. It's always a little bit more challenging when a lot of people are around using their phones. I hope we have a good connection until the end. We should be fine. So, in the summer, this is a happening place. Lots of people come here on picnics to play pétanque. Some of the boats, the former barges, have been turned into bars. One of them is even a library, I believe, though I didn't see it this week when I was here. Lots of things happening here. Locals and visitors. And of course, typically lined with restaurants and bars. Right now, everything is closed, so you see people having picnics. I saw them this week. They sit by the canal and have picnics. Still enjoying the area. I'm facing the wind. I hope it's okay for you. Now, we need to talk about what happened here once the canals were open and the area started developing. Mid-19th century industrialization. This place is completely transformed, completely transformed. We have factories, we call them fabriques, that set up shop on both sides of the Bassin and along the canal, the one that's over there, the one that's behind us, the Canal Saint Martin. And so this whole place becomes, well, let's just say it's not as friendly, as romantic as it was in the early 19th century. People can't really use it anymore because you have immense. It becomes a port, one of the busiest ports in France. In fact, in the mid-19th century, it was busier than the port of Bordeaux. Tens of thousands of barges each year would come through the canals, and they bring merchandise, they bring coal, they bring wood, they bring food, grains to Paris. And they made things around here. They made glass, they made ceramics, they made candles, they made perfume. All sorts of factories were here. This place was unrecognizable. I'm going to show it to you, if I can find my little picture. This is the mid to late 19th century. You can see the chimney stacks from the factories, you can see the barges, the dockers, the mariners working. It becomes a working class neighborhood. Very different area. Just a few, I like to talk about the past, but as you know, I also like to show you Parisian vibes when I can, and this is a great place to get those. You see Parisians at play right now. Electric boats. So keep in mind, that's pretty much what they used to do, minus the electric boats, sailing at the beginning of the 19th century, after the Bassin de la Villette was inaugurated. History goes in a circle in a way. You have people playing pétanque, always a popular place for pétanque here, both sides actually. See a lot of people with food or drinks, enjoying a good time, an apéro. The cafes are closed, so they make it work somehow. Parisians, it's unheard of. Parisians have been without their cafes and restaurants for months now. Notice the interesting architecture around us too. Newer architecture, not necessarily very pleasing or pleasant, which is from the 60s and 70s. So kind of a mix. We are coming upon footbridge, and I thought it'd be fun for you to cross it because it's been here, well, the original version has been here since the late 19th century. La passerelle de la Moselle. La Moselle is a region in eastern France. This version, which everybody agrees is quite ugly, was added in the 1960s after the first one suffered damage. This was the original one, and it was beautiful, built in the 1880s. There was a big clock in the middle that you don't see here, but clearly this is the second half of the 19th century. Do you see how industrial the area had become? You see the chimney stacks, the factories, you see some barges, some steamboats, people working. I wanted you to get a feel for what it was like. Yes, restaurants can do takeaway if they decide to. Not all of them decide to. You have a giant apéro party here, which they are not really supposed to do. We have been warned by the government this week that if people weren't responsible this weekend, Paris might enter a weekend lockdown like other French areas. Clearly, some people haven't quite registered that. And because of them, we might be in lockdown next weekend. There is still a curfew at 6 p.m. every day, which is why I have to live stream so early in the day for some of you, because I need time to get home. I have to be home by 6 p.m. and I do follow the rules. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Thank you very much. Oops, I think I just crossed the pétanque court here. I'm glad I didn't get hit by a... I just realized. You see? They don't seem to mind. So, how about we take a stroll on that footbridge, my friends? Thanks, Janet. So this is roughly what you would have done, starting in the late 19th century, crossing the Bassin de la Villette on that pretty footbridge I just showed you, but now we are, of course, on the newer one. Thank you. I am lucky to have very understanding followers. Humor is important, my friend. What else have we got? All right, this is a great place to be, actually, in spite of the wind, because we get pretty terrific views. Look at the crowds. We get pretty terrific views of the Bassin de la Villette. Let's turn around for a sec, though I'm facing the sun. It won't be too good on that side. I wanted to show you the Rotonde, the building where we started, but the sun is just facing us. That won't work. Here's that 1960s, 1970s architecture I was talking about. That was not the best time in Paris as far as architecture goes, as far as projects went as well. So, if you want to picture what this area looked like in the second half of the 19th century and into the early 20th century, in fact, when it was all industrialized, most of the buildings were taken down. When the city of Paris reclaimed the area around the Bassin de la Villette and the canals, they took down a lot of the old buildings, a lot of the warehouses, a lot of everything. But they did keep a few. These two over there were used to store grains and flour, and there was the exact same building on that side. Unfortunately, it burned down in the 1990s and they rebuilt it in a different way. We will talk about it when I get closer, but if you want to picture what a lot of the warehouses look like, you can look at this one. We will see it better in a little while. This area and the Canal Saint Martin, which is the most popular of the canals, has only been trendy for 15-20 years. And it really started when that movie came out, Amélie Poulain. The movie turned Montmartre into a cool area once again, and there was a famous scene that was filmed on the Canal Saint Martin on one of the locks, and that's why, everybody started coming here again. But I've noticed that a lot of people who come here don't really realize what they just know. It was an old area, but a lot of people don't know the story, which is a shame. Because this is really one of the greatest, I think, of the best stories about Paris in the 19th century, what they accomplished here. Watching my step, I'm going downstairs, pardon me. I hope lots and lots of stairs. I don't want to go rolling down the stairs, so that would make for good live footage, no doubt. Oh no! Véro just went down. Look at her go. All right. We are now back to the Quai de Seine, across from the Quai de Loire where we just were. We crossed. Here is our bridge, or footbridge, I should say. I'm glad you're enjoying the walk. So am I. This is my third time here this week. So these barges you see here, you can see chairs on them. A lot of them were bars, and that's all gone, right? For now. So in the 19th century, you would have had commercial barges. You would have had goods, boxes stored all over here. Nobody would be having fun here. People would be working. Look at those beer kegs. That gives you a feel for that. Part of this walk here is named after Yves Montand and Simone Signoret, the two actors and activists who are beloved in France. We've talked about them before when we were at the Place Dauphine on the Île de la Cité, when I took you there. This is where they lived for many years. Had a great love story. So when I was here during the week, I realized that that's a pretty cool place because you hear so many foreign languages here, many of which I didn't recognize. And those are people living in Paris. So this is a very I'd say, culturally diverse neighborhood, the 19th arrondissement. And that's reflected when you walk around, because there are people here, more pétanque, or that game, I forgot what it's called. Very culturally diverse, I think, is a good way of putting it. This is not necessarily the picture of Paris that a lot of people have when they've never been here. Wow, I think there are even more people on this side, if that was possible. That's right, les boules ou la pétanque. You know, I'm glad we're doing this today, because with all the people I see wearing no masks, I wouldn't be surprised if they closed it tomorrow. We have been warned. They do have the masks, they just don't put them on. Yeah, the weather has been like this all week, but it was warmer. I was wearing short sleeves earlier this week. Today, not so much. So this is the only boat you will see these days on the Bassin de la Villette and along the canals are leisure boats. And the tour boat I showed you from Canorama. But this is a small marina here, so people can, I'm not sure how long they can stay. I know they can stay longer at the Bastille, at the Port de la Sonale, which is another port. But I think they can spend some time here as well. They just need to check in. Thanks, brother. My little brother George is here. Boy, this is really crowded, guys. I did not expect to see so many people here, though I should have known. Everybody loves the water. So many people stick to the Seine River when they come to Paris and think it's the main Paris waterway, but it's not. The canals, the Bassin de la Villette, are actually very, very popular areas as well. Boy. Ha! So far, cell coverage is holding up, and I see lots of phones out, so I'm surprised. All right, so we're getting closer to those two buildings I pointed out from the footbridge. This is the original one over there from the 19th century, of course, heavily remodeled. And then you have the one they did after the fire here. And this one is a youth hostel and a hotel and a restaurant. The one over there has a great restaurant pub called Paname Brewery, where you can taste the simple microbrews. The French are making more and more microbrews these days. You have some musicians. Yeah, it's a little too crowded, I agree, Elizabeth. I'm dodging people the best I can. More pétanque over here, as you can see. Thank you for the kind comments and the support. I haven't introduced myself yet for those of you who are here for the first time. I guess I'll have to do that in a minute. Here's a great place when it's open, La Maison des Canaux. This is again one of the original buildings from the 19th century, and it's a coffee shop and a restaurant. They have a beautiful little outdoor area, lots of fun. And inside it's like a real house with different rooms. They haven't changed the rooms so much, so it's fun to see how people lived in the 19th century. And this is Paname Brewery. And you can rent those electric boats alongside the canal. You can also take lessons and learn how to, if not sail, learn how to canoe and kayak around here. La Criée restaurant that I mentioned. And this is, we're about to start my favorite part of the walk, because it's the most surprising, I think. Merci, merci pour la musique. Merci. See, this is a Holiday Inn Express. So if you're looking for an affordable place to stay and you want to get cool vibes around the Bassin de la Villette and the canals, this would be a good place to stay right here. It's lively at night in the summer as well. So in the summer, it's pretty safe at night because there are always people around, groups of people having fun. Outside the summer, it's not. I don't know that I would come here at night by myself. As a woman traveling solo, I might. I walk pretty fast. I run even faster. Okay, I'm not supposed to cross. Jaywalking. So this is my favorite place. You know, when La Villette grew and was transformed forever by all the industries that came and settled down along the Bassin and the canals, they decided to create a real town center, really, because the village had outgrown its church, so they needed a new church. There was a city hall, all the things people needed, and what they needed was a square, a little neighborhood park. And so this park has been renamed in recent years after Serge Reggiani. I'm showing you his name because he was an extremely talented and popular French artist. He was actually Italian, but moved to France when he was young with his family, like many Italians did in the 1930s. He started his career in movies and became hugely famous as a singer. Beautiful lyrics, because he was such a good actor too. It was always fun to see him perform. So look him up, Serge Reggiani, great guy. So this is the name of the square. Boom. I don't know that we had to slam that door quite so hard. The poor door, gate. And look at that. We just left this former industrial area that's been reclaimed by the city and the people, surrounded by pretty futuristic or modern architecture. And here we are in the middle of a little square, or a square in English even, like in a village outside Paris in La Provence. And that's quite magical. And it's called La Place de Beach. Beach is a town in eastern France. And these are the new fountains I wanted to show you. You've all known those, you've all seen those fountains before, but because of coronavirus, you now have soap in the fountain. See, so they've tied up soap and you can actually wash your hands in Paris. In most parks you have those now. So that's new if you haven't been here for at least a year. Let me step back so I can show you a little bit more of this beautiful square or public garden on the Place de Beach. We have some flowers already coming out. Look at that. And for it to be the perfect square or garden in La Provence outside Paris, we need a church, of course, and here it is. This church was added to replace the former parish church of La Villette, which they had outgrown in the 1880s, and it is called Saint Jacques, Saint Christopher, so Saint James, Saint Christopher. It's beautiful inside. I went and took a few photos. I don't live stream inside churches and religious sites, and I'll be sharing those photos later with the club members, as I always do after those strolls. Here is the beautiful kiosque à musique or gazebo where a band can play. It's quite nice, isn't it? So I think now is a good time actually to introduce myself, if I may. Voila. For those of you who have never met me, bonjour. My name is Véro. I am a Paris-based tour guide and content creator. I do a lot of things. I also teach French online. And I live stream once in a while and share my favorite places in Paris and in the rest of France. Many people don't know yet that I have a YouTube channel where I have shared so many of my adventures over the last 2 years. And if you want to travel virtually in France for free, just head to that YouTube channel and you'll love it. There's a lot there. In fact, this week on Facebook, I will be embarking, I think, on a Tour de France where I'll be sharing some of my favorite videos that I filmed last summer in August as I was traveling around France. There you go. So thank you for joining me today. All right. Let's get closer to the church. We're going to wrap up in the next 10 minutes. So this is stroll number 3 of 3 strolls I started to tell the stories of the story of those Parisian waterways. The first stroll was when I took you to the new and improved Place de la Bastille about a month ago, and we finished by the Port de l'Arsenal, the port there, and we talked about the Canal Saint Martin. Then I did another stroll, a private stroll for my club members along the Canal Saint Martin just a couple of weeks ago. Today we are exploring the Bassin de la Villette and discussing the story of the former village of La Villette. And then I will tell you about stroll number 4 a little later. So here is the beautiful church of Saint-Jacques, Saint-Christophe. It's a 19th century, pretty classical architecture. And the 2 saints are here. I think this is Saint-Jacques. I can't read, I don't have my glasses. And I think this is Christopher, Saint Christopher right here. The baptismal fonts inside the church are in the middle of the nave, and it's quite pretty. Next to it is a cool building. This building is part of about 40-something buildings, similar buildings in Paris, that belong to the Sapeurs-Pompiers de Paris, the Paris firemen. They are a little bit different from the rest of the firemen in France because they are organized, they belong to the military. And the reason they belong to the military is because Napoleon I, again, we do talk about him a lot today, attended an event when he was still emperor of the French and a ball in Paris, and there was a big fire and he almost died. So being the hardworking guy that he was, he spent the night and then in the morning he had a plan. And being a military guy, he believed in military efficiency, so he decided to organize a fireman force in Paris that would be military. And since then, the Paris Sapeurs-Pompiers de Paris have been part of the military. The only other city that has pompiers, firemen, that are part of the military is Marseille. Those are the only 2 cities. They're doing work on it. They were doing construction this week. Here's the name of the square if you want to follow. Place de Beach. And there is a plaque I spotted the other day here that tells you how old the building is. It tells you that it started operating in 1901, you see? And we are on a different quay here, but again, named after a French river that runs outside Paris in the north, l'Oise. And across from us is another river. So the water theme, you might say, runs very strong here. We are now in the back of those 2 former buildings that were used to store grains and flour for the city of Paris. The original one and the one that was rebuilt. I am going to try not to have a bike hit me here because we are crossing a bike lane. They're everywhere these days. Look how pretty this is. So we are now officially, we have left le Bassin de la Villette. And if you followed what I explained at the beginning, we are now along the Canal de l'Ourcq. The Canal de l'Ourcq, which is going to run for about 100 kilometers outside Paris. The main one, I would say. Let's see. This is a cool place. This is where we are going to wrap up, my friends. This is le pont de Crimée. Le pont de Crimée, the bridge of Crimée. This is la rue de Crimée, one of the longest streets in Paris. In fact, if we followed the street in that direction, we would reach the hill of Belleville, one of the longest in Paris. This bridge is quite a feat technologically. It was added in the late 19th century. At first it was a revolving bridge, but this one is actually a lifting bridge, un pont levant, the only one of its kind in Paris. So literally it is a rectangle, and when the boats come, it just lifts like this. But they didn't want Parisians who are always running to have to wait when that happened, which was the problem with the older bridge. So what they did is they created this footbridge so that you can still cross if the bridge is lifted. Isn't that clever? And it's fun to watch it operate. The hydraulic system was quite revolutionary at the time. And like I said, it's the only one of its kind in Paris. It'd be cool if a boat could come now and we could watch it, but maybe not. We'll see. Now, there is a very famous photo of the poet Jacques Prévert arriving on this bridge that was taken by Robert Doisneau in 1955. You can Google it. And that also made the bridge famous. Look at the pretty Place de Bitche, that little square we just came from. Isn't that lovely? And you can see the electric boats are still coming here on the Canal de l'Ourcq. And if I turn around facing the sun, not so good. We have the big Bassin de la Villette where we just came from. We walked around it. We started on that side, crossed the footbridge, followed that side. These are the two former buildings for storage. And here is the the lifting bridge, le pont Levant. You see, le pont de Crimée. So, the continuation of the story, now that we've covered le Canal Saint Martin and le Bassin de la Villette, the continuation of the story will be the Canal de l'Ourcq and then the place where it meets the Canal Saint-Denis and the really cool place that's in the middle of them, which is the giant complex known as La Villette. Now, earlier this week, I filmed a 50-minute guided tour of that area. I just walked alongside, and it was really fun to do that on a beautiful day. And I will be sharing this stroll with Friends with Véro club members. You've all heard about the club by now. If you're not brand new, this is how I make a living. And in exchange for my club members' support, I share a lot of exclusive content with them. The most popular level is called the Flâneur level. For the cost of 2 lattes a month, you get to travel to Paris and France several times a week, on top of the other content I share on social media. So, if you'd like to see walk number 4 and get back to walk number 2 along the Canal Saint Martin, which you can find in the archives, look me up on Patreon, patreon.com/FrenchGirlInSeattle. All that information is going to be in the video notes as soon as I come off the air, so don't worry. And this is a really beautiful view of the Canal de l'Ourcq as it leaves Paris, as it heads towards the Ourcq River outside Paris. That's also a very thriving area. And a long, long time ago, the two quays here in this working class neighborhood in the second half of the 19th century, early 20th, were actually specialized in plaster and in coal. So you would have coal workers here. The barges would unload the coal here. And then you would have the people working on plaster, or maybe it was the other way around. So I like to picture people with totally white faces working with plaster all day, and people covered in black suit, with black faces working with the coal. That must have been quite something when they met, possibly on the footbridge where we're standing right now. Over there are more barges that are bars, usually, and restaurants on the side. So this is a really fun scene. All right, so time for me to say goodbye. Voila. I have the sun straight in my face, always fun. I'm going to do this. How about this? Yay, so you can see the little gazebo behind me. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed the stroll with your tour guide. I have a virtual tip jar on PayPal. That information will be in the video notes as well. And if you have enjoyed the stroll, tips are greatly appreciated. They cover the cost of preparing for all this and running the tour. And I guess I will see you very soon when I see you on social media in the meantime. Thank you for joining me today. À bientôt.